This is the Friday Rugby Preview on Borders Rugby Radio with Stuart Cameron.
Hello and welcome to the Friday Rugby Preview. It's Cup weekend in Scotland and we have 4 Borders teams in round 2, so we'll be hearing from the coaches ahead of those games. Dale Clancy is with me, and let's start by reflecting on Monday night's Border League final between Melrose and Selkirk. It was a close encounter. It was won 12-6 by Selkirk. Pretty scrappy affair, it has to be said, but no less exciting for it, and ultimately it was Selkirk who got over the line to win their 7th Border League trophy in over 100 years.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't a classic by any means, and it was quite strange that the best 40 minutes of that was actually when it was 3-0. In the second half, it was a tetchy affair. I think I said that in commentary, and it was a strange game, but it was quite absorbing at the same time. To be fair, it was both teams played it as if it was a cup final in wet conditions. There was a lot of uncharacteristic errors from some players. It lacked a lot of continuity, but I think that's I think that a lot of that comes down to nerves. A lot of it came down to the fight that Melrose showed as well. I think they perhaps, rattled Selkirk. They couldn't get into a rhythm. They couldn't control the game. And really, that gave Melrose a chance to almost snatch it at the end. And, in terms of a cup final and a Border League final, obviously, it was almost the perfect game plan from Bert Grigg. But just in the end, I think those little bits of class perhaps showed off. Like, even that, the try from Aaron McComb, was a lovely line. Craig Jackson drew the defenders in, but even the final try from Ryan Cottrell, it was a great bit of individual skill, but just counter-attacking rugby. A team tried to clear their lines. It was good counter-attacking. They targeted the space, and it was individual brilliance after that.
Well, you mentioned the Cottrell try, which was an outstanding moment for me, but also the other moment I think I was going for was the Melrose drive forward of about 20 metres right up to the line. They won the penalty, they won the yellow card, they took the throw in. It was all set up for a grandstand finish, and they lost the ball, which was almost the story of the match because their set piece just really didn't function. Yeah,
and I think that's perhaps one of the angles of the final, is the fact that it was intriguing in the way that the game's played. Like, Melrose can make that 20 metres from that driving maul, get themselves in an attacking position, and then almost the kind of underwriting story of their game was their set piece. They were dominated in the scrum, and their line-out just wasn't functioning. And I think Logan Kirk had a huge impact when he came off. But then it did show that it wasn't just the hooker's problem. It wasn't just the throwing at the line-out, because usually Ben McLean, number 8, he would throw in. So, it wasn't just the hooker's issue with not finding his target. There was a little bit of miscommunication in there as well, a bit of inaccuracy. The weather plays into it. It's just unfortunate, because there, you think if Melrose get 5 metres, over the last 20 years, every time Melrose get 5 metres away from a try line, they're throwing the line out, they usually score, but just on that occasion they never. But, it just was another intriguing part of the game. It wasn't a free-flowing game of rugby and great to watch for the neutral, but the two things was it was intriguing and interesting, and there was a big sizable crowd there in the stand as well, I thought. So for a Monday night game, showpiece final, I think it was really well attended. I think about 750 people were in attendance for a Border League final between two teams at a neutral venue. Was pretty good for the game.
Yeah, on a Monday night as well, because I don't think I've ever been to a Monday night in the Borders for a match. Can't remember.
I can't recall a Monday night game, and I don't think it's going to be the answer for the Border League, but it's certainly an avenue. I remember speaking to Adam Clark, and he was an ex-Peebles prop, and he was speaking about when he was coming up through the system. He was younger, and they used to play Tuesday, Thursday nights for the Border League, and it was like he said it was better than training, because you've got that practice against, at the time, Peebles as well. It was higher opposition. They were in the Premier, starting to get into the Premiership, so that might be an avenue that teams need to look down and clubs need to look down, as perhaps playing some Thursday nights and some Tuesday nights as well.
What do you reckon to next season? Because obviously we've got the 10 club system which is going to be operating, which frees up four Saturdays right off the bat, and a possibility, I suppose, of midweek games or whatever, and the Border League sort of being a bit more substantial than it has been in recent times, for obvious reasons.
I think it's going to be interesting, because it's almost for the first time in a long time the Border League can perhaps cater to themselves and not just to the national leagues. And even when my arguments the last couple of years with trying to do a Premiership and a Nat 1, the league games were like aggregate double headers essentially, so they would count for a lot more. You ended up having Prem versus Nat 1 in the final. It's what we had this year, so there would be no difference, but they can almost start to cater to themselves, and they might want to go back to a league structure that they just play, they play everybody once Doesn't matter if you're home and away, it's just luck of the draw, but you play everybody once and then we end up with a border league again. Or they might want to, use these midweek games, they might want to have a more substantial, mini tournament culminating in a final, but there's certainly options there, and really the options are no different to this year, because potentially we're going to have 4 teams in the Prem and 3 in Nat 1 as opposed to the other way around.
Yeah, and the possibility, I suppose, of Berwick coming back in again, because we knew they pulled out about 5-6 years ago when the standard of where they were playing rugby was a lot below all the others. But now they're back. They were very competitive against Peebles home and away.
Yeah, I think that it would be good for the Border League if Berwick were to come back in. They've been great advocates for everything to do with Borders rugby. For certainly, not without looking back in the history books, but as long as I can remember, Berwick are a Borders team. They support the Kings of the Sevens. You can almost argue the same about Peebles as well. Late comers to the Border League. I'd probably stop short of the case about Haddington. I wouldn't be inviting them back in.
No.
But there is scope there to change it, and it just needs to work this time. Though I think that we're not going to be too disillusioned and not think that the Scottish rugby fixtures will be jiggled up in the next few years, because they probably will. There'll be a restructure at some point, but it's an opportunity for the Border League to really sit down and think about how do we take this competition forward, because there's not a lot of sports or organisations or anything that can claim for much, but the Border League can claim to be the oldest competitive rugby union trophy in the world, and they need to harness that. There needs to be some prestige and some protection around that, because it can easily go the other way, and all of a sudden it can be another competition that's the most current, oldest competition in the world, which is still active.
Absolutely. Well, lots of food for thought there. But let's look forward to tomorrow's fixtures. It's the Scottish Cup Round 2. First of all, your thoughts on the Cup itself, because we've already seen Watsonians pull out of their game at Mar because they can't field the front row. And GHK and Stirling County are playing a league double-header now with the match switched to Bridgehaw. And clearly, if you've got league issues to address, the Cup is a bit of a distraction that you don't really need. And this is why we need all competitions contained in its own time frame, not overlapping.
Yeah, I think if the Stuart Cameron Cup can be implemented next year, everybody would be, very, very happy. But I think it is it's an afterthought. Which, if it's an afterthought, then the clubs act the way they act. Now, we can't help front row cover, and we can't help fixture congestion, lack of players or whatever, but we can help support that. And as a kind of rugby union, there needs to be a little bit more support. I'm 99.5% convinced now. I've went that 0.5% towards thinking your stuff is exactly right. It's exactly what the club game needs, because I've said it before. I remember sitting in my bedroom watching Hawick versus Glasgow Hawks in the final, and seeing the club rugby, the folk who, were butchers, bakers, candlestick makers playing rugby in the National Stadium. That is now no longer the case. It's really difficult to fill that stadium for an amateur showpiece event, but I think that's because of what it's become. If you can bring that back to being a real tournament, which has got a bit of prestige, it's got that clamour, and I think if you've got 10 teams, essentially, if you go for the national competition, you've got 10 teams. I would say that it would be a huge occasion at Murrayfield if you were able to get that, and it brings that opportunity for players to run out in Murrayfield again. And it does need, similar to what I said about the Border League, it needs its own protection, its own identity, and the players and the clubs need to be engaged in it.
Yeah, and a 1 in 5 chance of getting to Murrayfield is a very attractive thing. And, back in your day, you would have loved to have run on the pitch and have those sort of odds, because, they really were 150, 100, I suppose, particularly for the smaller clubs to reach that. So, you never know what's going to happen. And it did sound a bit that I was having to go at Watsonians. I wasn't at all there, because really Watsonians and GHK and Stirling and Kelso all involved in the Cup this weekend. They've all got bigger fish to fry. I mean, they have to concentrate on the National League. Yeah,
you're not having a go. You're just highlighting the exact problem that we're saying about the competitions. Like, it would be you wouldn't be doing anybody any sort of service by glossing over it, and you have to say it as it is, and it's not going to fix itself if everybody starts to go, but next year will be okay, or it needs to be firmed up, it needs to be structured, it needs to be communicated with the teams and the clubs as well pretty soon, so that they know what they can vote for, what they can buy into, how they can prepare, because the clubs rely on this. The clubs rely on the gate money, the sponsorship, the big days, the players coming through. There's a whole lot wrapped around how the fixtures are laid out. So it's certainly something that does need looked at now, because I think everything else has found its place. It's just a matter of shaking it up a little bit to make sure it's sustainable.
Yeah, and the 10-team league system, I totally buy into. I think that opens up the doors for other ideas and getting the league season over, then concentrate on the cup, and then you've got your sevens if you want it. And it gives people as well the chance that if they want a rest during January, February, or they want to do inter-district rugby January, February, then that's possible as well. So I'll have a look at the other ones first of all. We've got Dundee against Glasgow Hawks. We've got GHA against Ayr, Stirling County versus GHK, which originally was going to be GHK at home, but they've made that the double header, so it's a National League National League 1 match between the two, and it's being played at Bridge Hall. And the Mar Watsonians game is off, so Mar will progress in that one. Now, the other 4 ties all involve Borders teams, and let's start with Edinburgh Accies and Hawick at Raeburn Place, and we'll hear now from Green's head coach, Matty Douglas.
Yeah, it's great to get back into Cup Rugby this weekend after a well-deserved week off. Look, it's been a massive couple of weeks for the club and for the players, and the challenge for us now is to refocus, and look, attention now turns to the Cup, and I said it back before the Jed game in the first round that we were targeting it, and it is a goal of ours to win the Cup competition. So look, we're taking it very seriously, and been a big chat this week just around obviously winning a Premiership, and we've got a target on our back, and it's how we react it and how we come out on Saturday. Complacency can't sink in, and I think there's a good buzz around training at the minute. Obviously a huge win against Curry 2 weeks ago, so we're probably still on a bit of high from that, but look, once Saturday comes, we'll be back to business and back to what we do well. I think performance wise 2 weeks ago maybe wasn't the greatest, but look, we showed a lot of character, and you need that in the Cup as well. You need that, especially going away from home into this Accies game. They're a top quality side. They're finished third in the Premiership, so they're tough to beat at home. But the good thing for us is we've managed that this season, and we know how and what we need to do to try and get a victory. A big challenge for us, and it's probably a lot on us how we react this week and how we go about our business. But look, pretty confident in terms of the way that we play, and we'll definitely need to be at our best to get a result on Saturday. Team news: a couple of changes to the squad. One change in the starting team that played Curry. Sean Fairbairn comes in for Connor Sutherland. In the back line, James Delaney comes in for the unavailable Charlie Welsh. So look, a bit of consistency in picking a side. Obviously a lot of speculation of players moving to the Super 6 for the Sprint Series, so there's always going to be 1 or 2 players that move on or whatnot. So it's great that we've got a lot of depth and be able to just bring players back into the team. On the bench is Matty Carrier, Rudy McLeod, Hugh Donaldson, Declan Lightfoot and Grant Huggan. Competitive squad. See by the team that we're picking, the intent that we've got in the Cup, and look, it's just about building momentum again and getting back to business on Saturday.
Well, the league is done and dusted for both those teams, so they can really focus on the Cup, unlike some of the clubs that, as we've just mentioned. It's an intriguing fixture, this one.
Yeah, it's an interesting fixture, because I think that both teams can certainly go at it with a kind of blank slate. I think the one thing that the final did show that was that not only are it's shown that Hawick are the best team in the country. They've been standout throughout the whole season. They've got a huge amount of character in that squad, but it did show they're vulnerable. I think it did show that if you go out and attack them, they've got that vulnerability that is every single club does. If the team get their game plan right, then everybody's vulnerable. But Curry attacked the game in a certain manner and came out of the traps and never let Hawick get off to a quick start. At Raeburn Place, if Edinburgh Accies are able to get on top of Hawick initially, it could be a difficult game. But Hawick are not in their, they're not in an isolated position in terms of being vulnerable from the Super Series as well. A lot of other teams will be potentially losing players or players getting looked at. So all these big teams, it's going to be an intriguing competition. And I know we've had a round of it already, but really this is only the bit because it's now knockout rugby. There was teams that got a bye, so now's the point where we can start looking at it and actually looking at it with a little bit of intrigue. But it's an interesting game because it's first versus third, in the Premiership. So it's a game that one of the favourites, because you would account Edinburgh Accies there as well. One of the favourites is going to go out.
Yep, so it's going to be intriguing. 20 games, of course, played by Hawick, won 19, drawn 1. They would have to do another 4 to go through the whole season and become cup winners as well.
I think that they've given me no reason to doubt that they can't do it. The only thing that I would say is that they potentially could have lost that game against Curry. That could have been a disciplinary issue in terms of the cards. It could have been the little lack of discipline here and there. Rugby's an intriguing and wonderful game. Like if we know the All Blacks are synonymous with rugby, but they're not always the best team in the world. They're vulnerable, and it's the exact same no matter what level you go down to. Saracens, look at them now. You look at the Crusaders in New Zealand and the ACT Brumbies. Those teams that were synonymous with being champions all the time. Their time comes up at some point, so it's going to be an interesting battle at Rayburn Place. But it's a cup competition, and Hawick will be probably well versed because they've been through 2 rounds. In the playoff semis and the final, that they're probably in that mindset. So they give me no reason to doubt that they can't go all the way.
Good, and we wish them well, of course. Next up, our commentary match at Philiphaugh. It's between Selkirk and Musselburgh. Selkirk coming off the back of a Border League final win on Monday, so they've got a taste of silverware, and they're ready for some more. Head coach Scott White.
Back to Philiphaugh this weekend after a good result on Monday night in the Border League final against Melrose. So, boys are looking forward to getting in another cup competition, which is great. Still a huge amount to play for in the end of the season. Looking at squad-wise this week, majority of the boys have came through unscathed, so the pack will remain the same. And in the back line, Ryan Cottrell unfortunately unavailable, and Ethan McVickers heading away to Australia. So 2 changes in the back line. So we're still looking into kind of how that's probably going to shape up, but have the backbone on Monday night, which is great. And it's 1-1 with Musselburgh. We obviously beat Musselburgh on the road, and Musselburgh turned us over down at home. So boys are obviously kind of still smarting from that a wee bit and keen to put that wrong to right. So big day down at the club as well on Saturday. The club have got Ladies' Day organised and stuff, so I'm hoping that the boys can put on a performance this Saturday, and then we get through to the next round of the cup, where we've been drawn against potentially Ayr or GHA. So boys are up for it, looking forward to it, and there's a excellent buzz in camp, especially after Monday night.
I bet there is. Scott White there, and of course the Scott White regime could be extended by at least another week. They'll want that revenge over Musselburgh, that's for sure.
Yeah, I definitely think they've got a point to prove against Musselburgh, because it's one of those games that perhaps they'll look back on with a lot of regret, because it was a game that they probably on paper certainly should have won. And hearing about, I wasn't there at the initial game, but reading the reports and hearing from a few of the fans that were down, it was a game that they probably should have won. It gave a lot of opportunities away, but they'll have to play better than they did against Melrose, on Monday night, because Musselburgh are a completely different style of team as well. They're very physical up front. They've got a good half-back pairing. They've got really dangerous wingers as well. So, they've got players that can do a lot of damage. But, it comes down to the thing, it's cup rugby, and you just need to get over the line like Selkirk did on Monday night. They didn't play well, but they won, and it would just take that again. They just need to make sure that they get the victory just to, give them another chance, because you think about it, they're the only team as well that have actually taken points off of Hawick this season. So nobody else has beaten them, but Selkirk have drew with them. So, that gives them that encouragement as well, that on their day they can mix it with anybody, but you need to be in the hat in the next round to make sure that you continue that journey.
And Musselburgh had a tremendous end of the season. Was it 4 wins on the trot and escaped from that trapdoor?
Yeah, and I think it was really important for Musselburgh to do that, because I'm not too sure of the intricacies of the club, but you feel that they're a club that need to sustain a bit of Premiership prestige. They might find it quite difficult to get back to those lofty heights again if they were to get relegated. So it was good to see them stay up, especially with the performances and the grit to get over, that line. How much is that taking out the players? It might be that they've, they're still riding on the crest of a wave, or, they might have all, some players departed down tools. They might have brought some players in to, really help that cause as well. So it's going to be interesting when you see the lineups, we see the teams, and obviously when we see the action unfold on Saturday.
Let's move on to Kelso against Heriots Blues. Again, a National One side with lots on their mind against a Premiership team that can focus on the Cup. Here's Director of Rugby from Kelso, Neil Hennigan.
It's one some of the boys are really looking forward to. We're going to give quite a lot of opportunities to players to show what they can do. The guys that deserve a chance. The Kelso Sharks team have had a pretty good season. They've been unbeaten up till now, so there's quite a lot of them getting an opportunity to play. Albeit it's a good couple of levels up for them, but this is their opportunity to shine, and a lot of them really deserve it. From the Ayr match, players that are being left out is Bruce McNeil, Greg Ponton, Charlie Marshall, Liam Herdman, Dwayne Patterson, Angus Roberts, Grant Shields, Liam Tate, Kevin Dryden, Ewan Knox, Archie Cowens and Cammy Thompson are all unavailable for this match. So we have a pretty new looking first team squad. As I said, a lot of the second 15 guys are going to get an opportunity here. Frankie Robson stays in the team as captain. Keith Melbourne helps out in the boiler room, along with Murray Hasty and Nick Stingle in the half-back partnership. The rest of the team are made up of second team players for most of this season. Some have had the odd game. So it's going to be a massive task for them, but as I say, it's an opportunity and one they totally deserve. So hopefully get another big crowd at Poynter to cheer them on, and let's see what kind of depth we've got at the club at the moment. So that'll be that's one of the positives we can get out of this, and it can obviously allow maybe the odd hidden gem that Bruce and Kevin haven't seen yet to provide more competition for the first team. We've obviously got 2 massive league games still to come, so yeah, our eggs are maybe all in one basket with the league, which is understandable, but we will be going out to try and beat Heriots with the squad we've got.
Okay, Neil Hennigan, and telling it completely as it is.
Yeah, it's coming up for Easter and all his eggs are in one basket, he's saying. So, yeah, it's. I think he was. It's good. He always speaks really, really well. He's as transparent as he can be. Sometimes he does. Maybe. Doesn't give too much away, but he doesn't need to. In terms of the league season, sometimes he's maybe not wanting to give too much of the team information away. But it's great there that he's very open, and explains that there's an opportunity here, and I think that's the main thing.
It's a positive spin on it, isn't it?
It is completely, and I think there's 2 things that stand out for me. It's at home. That always raises your performance levels if you're staying if you're playing at home, and you've got your family and friends coming around for you. Some of these players might be playing for the first team for the first time, so they're going to get that support. You get that lift. So it's a cup game. They might be able to mix it for a long period of time, and if they can stay in that game and frustrate Heriots, it might be a thing that they do upset the odds. But they are saying they're focusing on that National 1 title. They want to get that. They want to get in the Premiership. The other side of that, if you're going to put a positive on it, they got to look at that squad depth for next year. So there will be some players there that they might be able to look at, analyse, and start to get the kind of development in those players as they look ahead. There's still work to be done in National 1, remember. So it's not a foregone conclusion that Kelso are going to go up. They've done all the hard work, and it would be silly for it all to be undone by fielding their strongest team and losing a few key personnel.
Next up, it's Curry against Melrose, and a formidable task for Melrose going to Millennium Park, where teams very rarely get a win. Here's head coach Bert Grigg.
Looking forward to playing Curry this week in the Scottish Cup. Obviously another Premiership opposition, a slightly different challenge to the Selkirk game. Curry play quite an expansive game of rugby. They move the ball a lot, which is good to see. And look, it's a chance for us to right some wrongs from Monday night. Obviously our set piece didn't function, and that's probably really what hampered us. But look, if we get that right, I've got no doubts that we can challenge against Curry, winning our own line out, winning our own scrum ball and disrupting theirs, and just looking to stop them playing as much. Squad's relatively unchanged. A few injuries from Monday night. Ross McConnell misses out due to injury. Elliot Ruffin in the back row as well, due to work commitments. Sees Gav Anderson and Gus Weir promoted from the bench after impressing off the bench on Monday night. So looking forward to seeing those guys step up the back line. Much the same. Hamish Weir unfortunately does miss out due to an injury, but we welcome back Harry Mikowski into the squad, who'll shore up that back 3 defence, and is pretty electric in attack as well. So looking forward to playing up at Curry this Saturday and hopefully progressing through into the next round of the Scottish Cup.
Certainly going to be a tough ask for Melrose, but the club will get plenty out of the experience, no doubt about that. A lot of young players in there who'll be experiencing this sort of level for the very first time. They've got nothing to lose, and if a few results had gone their way this season, they could well have been facing the likes of Curry next year.
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity for these these young players, and it's almost surreal to be speaking about Melrose, saying that they're stepping up a level, but that's just the lie of the land now. I think again, there's areas of Melrose's game, if they want to compete at that level, they're going to have to improve on. I know Bert Grigg just said there about making sure that they can win their set piece and win their line out ball. That is probably the two areas that lost them the Border League final, if we're being honest. The attacking continuity for either side wasn't there, but they defended really aggressively. They conceded a couple of tries, but you're always going to concede points in a game of rugby. So everything else was there, the components were there. They just need to make sure their set piece ticks. But it's a great opportunity for these young guys, and especially the players coming in for the injured personnel.
Now, Hawick will face Curry or Melrose in the next round, the quarter-finals, if they win. Selkirk will be away to GHA or Ayr, and Kelso home to Dundee or Hawks, which would definitely be a winnable thing if they can get past Heriot's Blues. In National 1, no Borders teams in action, but as we've heard, Stirling County will play GHK in the double-header. Aberdeen will play Highland, and Biggar against Stewmel. Some important games there down below. Yeah,
definitely. It's still a lot of rugby still to be played. So obviously, I think the cup's interesting in itself. I think even if Hawick do go through against Curry, you've got a repeat of that final. But it gives other teams an opportunity. So it's really great to see. But obviously, a lot of important games there. Biggar, after they picked up a good win against Gala, they've got Stewmel, who are pretty much down and out at the bottom.
They are relegated, in fact.
They're relegated. Yeah. So, they're in Aberdeen as well. They're two teams that haven't had a great season. But, you've almost got a Caledonian derby in there. So, still some really interesting national fixtures coming up.
And in National 2, Peebles are away at Bottom Club Hamilton. Ian Chisholm has been talking to us about that one.
Looking forward to Saturday away up at Hamilton. Again, last time out when they come down to the gates, we actually played really, really well, and the scoreline probably didn't reflect that. Look, on that day we had a referee that really let the game flow, and he didn't blow his whistle too often, so that probably benefited both teams there, because Hamilton, I'm unsure of what their messaging was, but look, they really tried hard to keep the ball alive. They didn't kick very often, and they had a few heavy ball carriers that caused us a bit of trouble, particularly earlier in that game, and it probably took us about half an hour to really get going, and when we did, we played some of our best rugby, but we just lacked that killer instinct to put the final pass away. And look, we're looking to start with that killer instinct this week and make sure that over 70% of the points that we've conceded this season have been in the first 20 minutes of a game. So it's a mental block for us. It's something that we need to home in on and just try different things and see what works with us. And I'm pretty confident that we've got our week right so far, and that our selection, while we've been forced into a few selections, I'm pretty sure we've got our selection right to go and play the way that we can. And look, we want to play at tempo, we want to build pressure through possession, we want to play multi-pass from rucks, and looking, if we can get that right, and again it all starts for the breakdown, if we can get that right, then we're going to give ourselves an opportunity to be successful and put in a performance. And our messaging to the boys all week has just been around focus on performance, focus on process, and look, the game will take care of itself. Let's not panic and let's not feel pressure. However the scoreboard is, for us, this is just about putting in a performance and proving to ourselves that we can play the way that we have in patches throughout the season. And going back to the first 20 minutes of the game, we need to manage our halfway better. We need to make sure that if we're kicking, we're not kicking to put ourselves under pressure again. We know that Hamilton, they do have a dangerous back three. They like to counter attack, so we're going to have our kick chase sorted out, especially in that first 20 minutes of the game. When we do get access into their half, we need to make sure that our details spot on just around our formation, our shape, our ability to attack short sides, and the big Achilles heel for us this season, which has been our line out. We get our line out right, and then the weeks that we have got it right, we've won our games quite easily. The weeks that we haven't, the score's been a little bit closer, and that's if you can't win your line out, you can't exit. If you can't win your line out, you can't launch, and it's really hard to win games, build pressure, and momentum if you don't have a line out. So we've done a lot of work on that this week, and look, I'm sure that the boys will be up for this, especially after that last Wade performance there. But look at our squad: John Gray, John Napier, Willie Aitken. In the second rows we have Cammy Pye and Sean Brotherston, and in the back row we have Finlay Collins, Finlay Sinclair and Murdo Anderson. Halfbacks are Jack Harrison and Frey McKeever. Frey's back from a broken hand and he's getting an opportunity at 10. I know that's where he wants to play. I've been pleased with what I've seen at training, just in how he's controlling the game, his timing of his passes, the type of passes that he's making, and just the general understanding of how we're trying to play. In the centres, we've got Rob Harrison and James Dow. And the back three is Scott Studdart, Neil Pate and me, Ian Chisholm. On the bench, and again, this has been an issue for us all season. We've went with 4 forwards, but there are permutations within the squad that mean, Murdo Anderson's played a lot of his rugby this season in the backs. Finlay Sinclair's played a couple game in the backs. Obviously Rob Harrison's a back row who's starting in the centre. So our bench is Andrew Brown. He comes back for his first game since his ban that he got for colliding with the referee against Falkirk. And Lewis Copeland comes onto the bench. It's just a bit of rotation. Give Willie Aitken some game time, and they'll come on and off the pitch a few times. Ross Brown, I don't think I've told him this yet, but he will cover back row and second row. And Ewan Jackson, who, look, he's played a lot of different positions this season. He's played in the centre for us. He has played scrum half for the Reds. And look at training, he's an organiser and he's an activator and he talks really well. So look, even if he's 50%, he's a good guy to have in the squad just because of the energy that he brings and the positivity that he brings. But excited for this weekend, and look, I'm just desperate for us to put in a performance and desperate for us to right a few wrongs that we did against last Wade.
Well, not much to go for Peebles, not involved in promotion or relegation, but I guess they're just focusing on next year now.
Yeah, I think that's it, and I hope that they're able to keep Ian Chisholm, because it's like he's building something, pretty good at Peebles, and he's getting that culture right with the players. They're all buying into it. They've been able to, get that bit of squad depth that they've perhaps not had, and it's perhaps been overlooked in times because a lot of the, apart from Lewis Bertram, there's been promotion within. There's been, a kind of players that have stayed there for a while. I'm probably the example. There was probably times that I should have been nowhere near the first team, but just because you've been there and it's, they're hoping that you'll be able to play to the levels you did before, you stay in there. He's given people a chance, and I think that's something that Peebles has really lacked for the last few years. So there's players like Sean Brotherston in the second row who played brilliantly against Melrose. Now, if you'd asked me a few years ago if he would have been in Peebles' first team playing against Melrose, I wouldn't have said he would have been, but he really impressed me. That front row as well has really showed up this season, and he's given youngsters that chance. So yeah, the focus now is towards next year's campaign. A kind of shorter campaign with the 10-team leagues, but they'll be hoping to make an impact and look towards the top.
Well, not too much to be concerned about from Peebles' point of view, but plenty for Berwick to be concerned about. Currently in 7th place. Good news is they're at home, but bad news, it's against the table toppers Newton Stuart, who are battling it out with Falkirk for that promotion slot, but they've played one more game than Falkirk, so they're going to be very competitive. Here's Berwick coach Colin Young.
This weekend we welcome Newton Stuart to Scremiston. Hopefully the conditions is good so we can play a brand of rugby that we've been training to. It's really important that we get the result this weekend in the division where there's 5, the bottom 5 are relegated. We're getting just a little bit too close for comfort in that zone. Not much changed team this weekend either, just due to the commitment of the boys has been great all season, and we just need to get the result.
Colin Young and Berwick, of course, we wish them the best of luck in that one. Good to have Mickey Yanotta back from his injury, so he'll be covering that one at Scremiston. It's going to be an interesting one against Newton Stuart. Berwick, of course, kicking themselves, I'm sure, about some of the results from early in the season. They lost at Boroughmuir, they lost at Hamilton, 2 teams that are just about relegated, I think, and of course that last-minute kick that Dumfries got to win the match at Scremiston. Valuable points lost, and of course that's why they're now down in 7th place in a bit of a battle.
Yeah, and you've probably got those 2 Peebles games as well to chuck in there. So if you take a losing bonus point out of it, if you kind of look, it's about 15 points they've perhaps given up. that 15 points could be precious come the end of the season. So, it's a really difficult task against Newton Stuart because, a lot of teams in the league, judging by their position as well, a lot of teams find it really difficult to play against them, more so away from home. But, they're at the top of the pile because they've got that form, they've got that, consistency in them. So Berwick will really have to dig deep to try and get a result, but any points that they can get now are perhaps going to be crucial.
Now Duns will be playing Forester away from home in East League 1, while in East League 3 it's a derby between Hawick Harlequins and Gallow IM. Adam Hall is Quins' captain. They're unbeaten in the league at the moment.
Yeah, we're looking forward to welcoming Gallow IM to Hawick this weekend. Good to have our first home game in a little while, just something to look forward to. Gallow IM seem to have been steady improvers this season, so we are going to have to be at it this weekend to get the result and keep up the league challenge. We've probably got a different team than we took over to Gala. It's the nature of the beast at this level that generally we've had a different team out almost every week, but we would like to think that we'll have a strong enough team to get the 4 and hopefully 5 points this weekend to go another step closer to winning the East 3 title, which would be a great achievement for the boys that have played for us this season in our first game back in the first year back in the regional leagues.
Adam Hall, and from a Gallow IM perspective, his player coach Stuart Walker.
That's us had a few weeks off now to recover after our game against Inverleith getting called off. They couldn't raise a team a couple of weekends ago. So back to playing the Quins away. We're looking forward to having a go. They'll be very motivated with their aspirations for winning the league in mind, and we know it's going to be a difficult task. We've got boys coming back from injury again, which is positive, and a couple of boys who've had knocks have had that time to recover. We've been on a really good run, and we've seen a very significant shift in the way we're playing. We've been really pleased as a management group with the way that the boys' attitude has been in the last few games. Going up to the Medics and getting a draw was a step in the right direction after some wins before Christmas, and it's got us really back on track. And then we had a good win against Trinity. We dropped off a bit in the second half, but we made a lot of changes around about half time, so that did impact the sort of flow of the game. But overall, we're really pleased with the way things have been going. Just looking to carry that in again against a strong Quins team on Saturday, and look to give it a really good go. We've got a couple more rearranged fixtures to play in the 7 season, so it's exciting times at the YM, and we're looking forward to the weekend.
Yeah, good to see Gallow IM and Berwick, of course, in the pre-qualifying round of the Melrose 7. So that's something for them to look forward to in the future. But they're in the final stretch now for Quins, certainly. But reading between the lines, I think they have a good team out that should be too strong for YM, although YM have been improving lately, as you heard from Stuart, with some really good results.
Yeah, definitely. And, it's one of those ones again that's a border derby. So you've got to take these games seriously because they can be a bit of a leveler. You could have one team, shooting away at the top of the table, the other team kind of scratching around for points, and the border derbies can sometimes bring them just that little bit closer. So Quins will have to be cautious of that and mindful that is the situation, because a little run of results and good performances can do a lot for a team, because they're the habits that these teams want to get into. So certainly it's going to be an interesting game, but you've got to say that Quins start that favourites.
Well, finally today, a quick word about the Youth Cup finals, which are happening at BT Murrayfield, also at Dam Health Stadium, and the back pitches at Murrayfield as well. Peebles under-18s take on Boroughmuir at 6 o'clock in the National Stadium. The Peebles under-16s play Stirling County under-16s in the National Youth Shield at the Dam Health Stadium. That's at 3:30, while Earlston High School / Melrose Wasps will face Ayr / Wellington at 11 a.m. in the under-18 Shield, and that's on the back pitches. But a great performance for all 3 teams, and it's just great to see 3 teams from the borders get to the national finals day.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was one of my most enjoyable days covering rugby last year, was at the national finals for the youths. We were obviously in the Dam Health Stadium, and we watched Gallowans and Melrose Wasps, and then we also watched Hoyt Youth and Kelso as well. So there was players likes of James Glendinning playing for Gala, so it's great to see the Melrose Wasps and Earlston High School get there again. But there has to be a note of Peebles. I think what they've done over the last few years has been exceptional. They've benefited from having a lot of players to pick from, but that, you get them 50 players to pick from, you might not have one rugby player. They have developed that team from the minis. Wolfenden and Thompson, the coaches have done a great job with them. They've also been nurtured by the likes of Drew Moore, who's come through and helped with the Colts. So the under-18s have been a standout team in Scotland this year. Winning their first semi-junior league in their history, that's a huge moment for People's Rugby Club. But also the under-16s showing that there's that sustainability coming through. There is a quality level of rugby player coming through that club now, which Jim Telfer, I remember hearing stories about him sitting in the lounge in the rugby club just saying if People's got their act together, they could be a force in Scottish rugby. And hopefully now the town itself is benefiting, or the club itself is benefiting from the growth of the town, but also just getting rugby guys in there that giving youth the opportunity. And there's no better opportunity than going to the national finals.
Well, that's your lot for today. We'll be back with another Friday rugby preview next Friday when the Cup reaches the quarter-final stages on April the 1st with some very important National 1 matches going on as well. But thanks for listening tonight, and from Dale and I, bye for now.